Can you hear that? The demise, the tragedies of a city in need screaming right before you. You can see what's happening every day on the streets and back alleyways of Brownsville, Texas. A creature of crime, fear, injustice, and evil that knows no fate and feels no love is controlling the life we live mercilessly. We've become victim to its overpowering grasp, but I've broken free. I have found the means to end this creature and all others like it. Tonight, a creature is reborn, a creature of justice, truth, and freedom that will bring vengeance upon those evildoers of the night. I will show them their fate, and they will come to no fear. Their end will come, and I will bring it. The cities of the Rio Grande Valley will know my name. My name comes from an ancient revered creature of the Aztecs and Mayans, El Tecache, the name of the hero, the opossum.
I've been illustrating since I was a teenager. It's all been just a practice trial. It's like everything else when you try something that you feel like you're not good at, you just keep at it until you develop your skill and you start learning from other things and you become, what you become as an artist now, as an illustrator now. I feel that I've gotten far enough to where I can say that I'm a decent draftsman, that, I've gotten, good enough to, come out with a good couple of comic book pages. The opossum was my vehicle that just carried my angst and my anger to where I could just, continue on and just, let it out through there. Well, I actually conceived him back in 1992 when I was in junior high. At that time, I was going through a lot of issues with myself. I was going through a lot of anxiety. I was going through a lot of anger, frustrations through countless of years of being picked on and just being alienated at that neighborhood where I was just looked at as, this yuppie, upper class person that a lot of the neighborhood kids would just, pick on and just, just very cruel and very mean at that time. From what I can tell you was that it happened on a February. It was in the year 1992. I was in my sister's room because she was close to the outside window. And all of a sudden I heard some rustling going on with my next door neighbor. And as I opened the curtains and I saw the window, I saw that he was fighting an opossum. And it's a thing where people don't like this animal. It's such a hated thing. And I guess I grew up feeling the same way a lot of people do about that thing. It's like, what a horrible creature. But for some reason, at that very moment, at that very time, when I saw him just trying to kill this animal, he tried to hit it with a rock. He tried to hit it with a stick. He threw it against the wall. He bashed it with some other kind of boulder and stuff like that. And this animal, of course, it would play dead for a moment, and then it would just come off and linger off and linger off. I mean, it was just like, I don't know, for some reason that snapped with me and I was like, wow, I mean, this is something like how I feel right now. I feel like such a wounded thing that just wants to or has to move on. And I felt so hated, I felt so not belonging, so alienated from where I lived. I said to myself, I think that's it. It's that animal, it's the opossum. This is what I envisioned myself to be, something hated, because I hated being there. I hated them at that time. So I wanted them to hate me while I was coming at them. Me being a big fan of comic books and just wanting to just get away from just myself and getting away from this world where I lived in, which was, of course, Brownsville, Texas. I always felt like I never belonged here. I always felt like I needed to be somewhere else. The notion of me using the opossum all started with actually wanting to do this in real life, me actually conceiving a suit, getting the gloves with weapons and actually going out and actually beating the living crap out of people that actually hurt me while I was living in this neighborhood and going to school. Thank God I didn't go to that extreme. In the mid-93s, I fell into a relationship. I actually was very, very much in love, or so I thought, with this one individual. Me thinking that the relationship was going to continue, unfortunately, or so I thought at the time, it did not. That kind of took a turn to where the story was going, and it started turning into like where I used it as a tragedy. I started amalgamating these three particular characters in my life that I knew, including that one girl that I had in my relationship, into this one particular girl who was not only artistic, but she was into that grunge rock look at the time, and she had the essence of the girl that I I thought I had loved at the time, or that I was infatuated with at the time. So I added that as a tragedy, and I named her Jada Lee Reyes. It was my wife that actually helped me name this particular character, Jada Lee Reyes. And she gets gunned down by these drug dealers that she lives close by in her neighborhood. That's where the whole vengeful thing started. That's where the whole opossum thing came out. And it became, where it was a thing about revenge. It was, I'm going to kill every son of a bitch that came and did this. As he goes off and kills off these drug dealers, he starts to realize, because he's got some kind of subconscious thing that's trying to push him to continue on with this chaos and this carnage, It's like, kill these guilty, It's like this voice in the back of the Aaron character's head saying, you need to kill all these guilty people. You don't want this to happen to anybody else. But at the same time, another part of him is saying, but wait a minute, this is still wrong. This is revenge. This is not justice. This is pleasing myself. During the middle parts of the story, he takes off somewhere in northern Texas, starts to get trained by some military academy that he gets himself into. The Aaron character again gets kicked out, but now starts to come back to Brownsville after a good 5 or 6 year departure, and comes back with a different look. This time his viewpoint is to try to do right. By right means avoiding the killing, the carnage that was done before, because now the opossum name itself in the valley now took especially in Brownsville, now took a different turn. It's not just an animal that was hated. It was seen as an urban legend. People were starting to see it almost like La Llorona or something like that, like the New Jersey Devil or something, because they had heard stories of this big giant opossum killing these drug dealers. So as he comes back to try to, do justice and do right on a continuing nightly torture to continue doing the right thing, he has to always struggle not breaking that promise that he doesn't want to fall into despair and do wrong anymore. My influence has always been to put Brownsville in the story because, the opossum takes place in Brownsville, Texas. Mainly what I try to do is like an exaggeration of where I live. It's not completely fact, but it is an exaggerated fiction. It's something that I'm calling a fictionography, which is a combination of a biography and fiction because it is a telling of my story. But I can tell you that a lot of that stuff would have not have been possibly done if it wasn't for my co-artist, Eli Vera.
When my friend told me the story, I didn't like it, the fact that he's gonna put the name, the opossum. And what does that mean? I said, right? He said, it's like tacuache in Spanish. And I said, why are you gonna put that name to a hero? Then I thought in Batman, like the bat, it's a gross animal. So I said, well, if Batman did good, why not the opossum?
He was the background inker and the guy that did the structures to all those buildings and those architectural sites that you see in the comic book. He did a fantastic job on El Jardín Hotel, and he did an amazing job on the church that comes out there as well.
All the people from here are real fast. They figure it out. Where exactly is that? And they say, oh wow, I know this place. I live around there, and so and so. And I said, well, that's the main point. Put some parts of Brownsville.
So it was his output and his view on how that entire structure was put together.
I give him some ideas about that. Why we don't put this? Why we don't put that? Let's put the border. Let's put that sign on the Brownsville right in front of the gray fox.
I know that sometimes my visions would go off to an extreme, and L.A. had a very good sense of grounding the story and the character in reality. L.A. would turn it back around and he would say, well, you got to understand where we live. You got to make it where it makes sense. And you have to understand that it's got to be grounded in a reality. You have to at least give it those rules, before you can still stretch out with the fantasy, but you need to put that ground first. Omer, I met him at an art show. I passed by his table and I saw that he had a lot of like what you call like pop art. He had a lot of that going on. He had a lot of like canvases on that.
What really caught his eye was I was actually reading a comic book while I was at the art show and, just waiting to talk to people and stuff like that. And he asked me, hey, you like comics? And I hold it up the comic, yeah, I like comics. And
I saw him reading a graphic novel on David Makabuki. And that caught my attention. I started talking to him of who I was, and I started telling him what I'm doing.
He said, yeah, I'm working on my own comic, and it's called this and that. And I was like, all right, that's cool. I never believe anybody when they're working on comics and say they actually have pages and stuff. I said, all right, cool. Well, here's my info. Here's my email. And so we got in touch with each other. And he kind of, I think he emailed me a couple pages, like 3 or 4, and I was like, holy cow, this guy's actually making a comic book. That's awesome. Like, it's not very often where you run into somebody locally who's actually trying to do it. A lot of people talk and never follow through, and he was following through, and that was really awesome.
So we set up a meeting. We got together at a coffee shop at a Starbucks.
Yeah, Aaron and I didn't necessarily get along at the beginning, only because I didn't understand him. I thought he was a really big character, and I don't think I'm that big of a personality. And here's this guy who's a total he's virtually nobody, and he's got these wild ideas, and he's very charismatic and loud, and he takes you through the whole scene and gives you all the sound effects and everything. And I was like, okay. I was taken aback by the grandeur of his personality. And so that kind of made me take a step back. And I think that's kind of where we clashed a little bit.
The same thing that, a lot of people that think when they see my comic book is that a story like that being told in a place like Brownsville, Texas has never been told before.
What sold me on Aaron was the sheer volume of pages he actually had finished. When I met him, he had close to 18, 19, maybe 20 pages. And so he was pretty set on having one issue complete. And at that point, I was like, all right, this guy's ready to go. And he just needed a little bit finessing with some lettering and kind of getting everything digital, scanned and all that. And he didn't have any knowledge of any of that stuff, basically. And so I just said, all right, well, I'll help you out, man. This sounds cool. Let's get this done.
I decided to have him do the cover for the issue #1. I thought he did a fantastic job. I was very pleased with it. Again, just like LA, he executed a vision that I had. He also introduced me to the printing company, Kablam, which is online, and gave me the ins and outs of how the comic book thing works, the inkings and the ink washes and the structure of a comic book. Omer was very good at putting my words into a defined comic book structure.
The credit says co-writer, but I'm more of a co-scripter, and like he's got the story all laid out. I just help finesse the writing so that it sounds better and it's correctly grammared to some degree.
I had never written a comic book before that. I was never too sure of how it went from like right to left and how the bubbles and the fonts were always placed. He was very good at knowing where to put all those things and how to put them in a sequence order. So as when the reader is reading it, it follows up and it doesn't just clumper up and you're not getting lost in what's going on in the translations. Without these two guys, the comic book probably would have never been done, and it would have never gotten off the ground. It was a team effort. It really was.
The response from the Valley has always been positive. They initially, like at the local cons, they kind of freak out and they're like, really? Wow, you all made a comic? Here's the actual comic. We show it to them, and the response is always positive. It's very supportive. It's good. I think it's awesome.
The biggest thrill that I get is when people come up to me and they say, hey, I can't believe somebody like you did something like that. That's incredible. They look at me and I have kids and just grown-ups and say, wow, this is something else, a comic book hero from Brownsville, Texas. That is just unreal. That jazzes me, man. That's like one of the coolest feelings I can have when somebody tells me something like that. It's like, wow, it actually makes me feel like, I have a purpose, I know I have a purpose with my family and my loved ones, but it's like I'm really touching a nerve out there with this. And if it can help anybody out there artistically themselves and help themselves with any kind of endeavor, any kind of issues that they have, and if they could use them in some kind of artistic way, if I by any means helped anybody go through that, that's the biggest reward ever. Every time I get the chance to explain, or when people do take interest in what I'm doing, when it's outside of the Valley, I always try to explain to them the method that I'm working with in relationship to a lot of other comic books that have been before me. Example, the relationship that the J. Jonah Jameson has with Peter Parker. J. Jonah Jameson, the editor of the Daily Bugle, he's always dogging Spider-Man. He's always trash talking him. He's always putting him down. He's saying he's a menace. He's a criminal. He's gonna kill us. He's this, he's that. And yet, all Spider-Man is trying to do is be the hero. He's trying to save the day. That's the same formula I'm using with the opossum. It's the thing that people hate. It's the first thing that people see is like, oh my God, that's disgusting. A 6-foot opossum. Oh my God, that's gross. But He's the one that's gonna save you from the mugger that's gonna come and kill you. That's what that is. It's the irony in it, and I'm a big fan of irony. The difficulties are like the same difficulties that everybody independently goes through, and those are finances. Finances are the crunching issue that holds me and holds a lot of people back from releasing, their brilliant artistic ideas, in very many cases.
Money is always the biggest obstacle. If you want to do a large print run, I mean, you have to get offset printing, and then you're talking about, 1,000 to 1,500 to 1,200 copies, and you're looking at, something like $3,000 or $5,000, depending on whether the book's color or black or white or whatever. But I think in Aaron's case, it'd be probably like $3,000 for 1,200 copies, and we've never had that many issues printed. I think the most on either issue is maybe 500 copies at the most, and that's in small runs of 50 to 100 copies. I wish there was more.
I do have plans to finishing the third issue, and I've got a story arc right now going to 6 issues. I'm planning to hopefully finish the 6 issues with this one particular villain that I'm very excited to bring out more and show more. I'm a proud Mexican, and I love being Hispanic myself. This particular villain kind of like shows all the ugly side of that. It's this villain that I made called Zoot, where when I was growing up, he represents all of that. It's like, that's what I saw, was the ugliness of that. My duties as a father, I'm a father of 2 children, and, I have to contribute to the family first and foremost before I do anything beyond that. The Opossum will always be something that I will always, continue to push and try to still develop in other avenues other than the comic book. But, as of right now, I still have plans to finish this story that I have planned.
Well, as of the second issue, I don't have anything to do with the Opossum because I've got my own stuff to work on. So I've had to, take a step back from that project and do my own project. The comic book I'm working on and still working on is Glitch, and I showed him Aaron when we met up. He's got his own story, and I've got my own story, and they never really branched or met or anything like that. We did talk about maybe a possible crossover at some point, but that's way off into the future.
I've got already a good number of villains that I can go on for a long period of time for like different types of stories. I've got it all stored away where I could just continue making these stories. If God gives me the will to continue on to do these things, I mean, the possibilities are endless, and as far as the eye can see, really, I mean, it's like, if I can take the Opossum to these heights, I mean, I would love to do it. I think it's a great story that I'm telling. I don't know of anybody that's actually put themselves in a fictional comic book like the way I'm doing it. At least I'm not sure. I've never heard of anybody doing what I'm trying to do, So, I mean, because when it comes down to it, I mean, I am the Opossum.